Thay's courtroom fell silent as Judge Sarah Reeves fixed her steely gaze on Officer James Miller. "Officer, you're under arrest," she declared, her voice echoing through the stunned chamber. The once cocky cop's face drained of color, his arrogance crumbling before the weight of justice. But how did we get here? An innocent black man named Marcus Johnson found himself staring down the barrel of Miller's gun, framed for a crime he didn't commit. As the truth unraveled, Judge Reeves uncovered a web of corruption that would shake the very foundations of the justice system. As we reflect on this story, subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more daily stories that need to be heard. Hit that subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Marcus Johnson's eyes drooped as he drove home after his night shift at the factory. The sudden flash of red and blue lights in his rearview mirror jolted him awake. Officer James Miller approached, requesting a license and registration due to a broken taillight. Marcus complied, his movements slow and deliberate, aware of the tension these encounters often brought. As Officer Miller examined the documents, his demeanor changed. His jaw tightened, eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Step out of the vehicle, sir," he ordered, voice now aggressive. Marcus's heart raced as he carefully exited, confusion and fear battling in his mind. Miller circled the car, hand on his holster. "I'm going to search your vehicle," he declared, heading to his patrol car without waiting for a response. Marcus watched, bewildered, as the officer reached for something inside. Returning, Miller's face twisted into a sneer. "Well, what do we have here?" he said, producing a gun in his gloved hand. Marcus's eyes widened. "That's not mine," he protested, panic rising in his voice. "I've never seen that before." Miller ignored Marcus's pleas, roughly handcuffing him and reciting the Miranda rights. Marcus's protests grew more frantic as he was led to the patrol car, his mind reeling at the unfolding injustice. As Marcus was shoved into the back seat, he glimpsed Miller's face. The officer's lips curled in a self-satisfied smirk, his eyes gleaming with unshakable confidence. Marcus realized he faced more than an unjust arrest. He was up against a system that seemed designed to work against him. The patrol car pulled away, leaving Marcus's vehicle abandoned. As they drove through the pre-dawn streets, Marcus fought his rising panic. He knew every word and action now could have profound consequences. Yet even as fear threatened to overwhelm him, determination took root. Somehow, he would prove his innocence and expose the truth behind this nightmarish turn of events. The gavel's sharp crack echoed through the courtroom, silencing the murmurs. Judge Sarah Reeves peered over her glasses, her keen eyes taking in the scene. As Officer Miller began his testimony, his web of deceit was about to unravel. Marcus Johnson stood before the court, his face a mask of quiet desperation. The events of the past 48 hours had left him reeling, thrust into a nightmare he couldn't seem to escape. Officer Miller's voice filled the room, painting a picture of Marcus as a hardened criminal caught with an illegal firearm. His words dripped with confidence, each statement delivered with authority. At Marcus's side, his public defender shifted nervously, papers rustling as he struggled to keep up with Miller's accusations. The young lawyer's eyes darted between his notes and the judge, a bead of sweat forming on his brow. It was clear he was overwhelmed by the high-stakes nature of the case and his limited preparation time. As Miller's testimony continued, Judge Reeves leaned forward, her brow furrowing. She interrupted, her voice cutting through the courtroom. "Officer Miller, could you please clarify the exact sequence of events leading up to the discovery of the weapon?" Miller hesitated, caught off guard. He stammered before regaining composure, but the damage was done. Judge Reeves pressed on, her questions becoming more pointed as inconsistencies emerged. The once confident officer began to fidget, his earlier swagger replaced by growing unease. Marcus watched the exchange with a mixture of hope and disbelief. For the first time since his arrest, he felt a glimmer of possibility that the truth might come to light. His public defender seemed to draw strength from the judge's scrutiny, sitting up straighter and scribbling furious notes. After an intense round of questioning, Judge Reeves leaned back in her chair. "In light of certain discrepancies in the testimony, I'm ordering a full review of all evidence related to this case before we proceed further," she declared. The courtroom erupted in hushed whispers, and Marcus felt his heart leap into his throat. As the proceedings concluded, Judge Reeves called her clerk over. In a low voice, she issued a series of instructions, her eyes never leaving Officer Miller as he hurried from the courtroom. "I want a complete background check on Miller," she murmured. "Every complaint, every reprimand, every commendation. Leave no stone unturned." The clerk nodded, understanding the gravity of the request. As he hurried off to begin his investigation, Judge Reeves turned her attention back to the courtroom. For Marcus Johnson, it was a ray of hope in the darkness. For Officer Miller, it was the first tremor of an earthquake that threatened to shatter his carefully constructed world of corruption and lies. The report landed on Judge Reeves's desk with a soft thud, its contents about to ignite a firestorm in the justice system. Inside lay evidence of a pattern so shocking it would force her to question everything she thought she knew about law enforcement in her city. As Judge Reeves pored over the pages, her face grew increasingly grim. Officer Miller's record revealed a disturbing history. Accusations of racial profiling, excessive force, and falsifying evidence painted a picture of a cop who had long ago strayed from his oath to protect and serve. Reeves's hands shook slightly as she reached for her phone. "I need Miller's body cam footage from the night of Marcus Johnson's arrest," she told her clerk, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. "All of it now." Hours later, Reeves sat in her darkened office, the glow of her computer screen illuminating her face. As she watched the footage, her worst fears were confirmed. There, in high-definition clarity, was Officer Miller reaching into his patrol car, retrieving a gun, and planting it in Marcus's vehicle. The evidence was irrefutable. Reeves leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. This case extended far beyond Marcus Johnson. How many other innocent people had Miller framed? How deep did this corruption run? The next morning, Reeves called the district attorney into her chambers. She played the damning footage, watching as the color drained from the DA's face. "We have no choice," Reeves said firmly. "All charges against Marcus Johnson must be dropped immediately." The DA nodded, his earlier bravado replaced by a mix of shame and fear. "Of course, Your Honor, but what about Miller?" Reeves's eyes hardened. "Officer Miller won't be walking free for much longer. I'm taking unprecedented action. He'll be arrested in open court where the world can see justice being served." As the DA left, Reeves felt the weight of her decision. She knew the coming days would be a whirlwind of controversy and media attention. But as she thought of Marcus Johnson and all the others who might have suffered at Miller's hands, she knew it was worth it. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of the local justice system. As Reeves prepared for court, she steeled herself for the battle ahead. The truth would come to light, and those who had abused their power would finally face the consequences of their actions. The courtroom doors swung open, and a hush fell over the gathered crowd. Judge Sarah Reeves took her seat, her face a mask of determination. Officer James Miller stood at the front, unaware that his world was about to come crashing down. Judge Reeves cleared her throat. "Before we proceed, there's a matter of utmost importance we must address." She nodded to her clerk, who dimmed the lights and activated a projector. The courtroom gasped as Miller's body cam footage flickered to life on the screen. The video revealed Miller reaching into his patrol car, retrieving a gun, and planting it in Marcus Johnson's vehicle. As the footage ended, Judge Reeves's gaze locked onto Miller. "Officer Miller, based on this irrefutable evidence, you're under arrest for tampering with evidence, obstruction of justice, and making a false arrest." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Spectators shouted in disbelief. Reporters scrambled for their phones, and fellow officers moved to detain their former colleague. Miller struggled against the officers as they handcuffed him. "You can't do this!" he shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Amidst the commotion, Marcus Johnson sat in stunned silence. Just days ago, he had been the one in handcuffs, facing a future behind bars. Now he watched as his accuser was led away, the tables turned in a way he never could have imagined. Judge Reeves banged her gavel, restoring order to the courtroom. In light of this evidence, all charges against Marcus Johnson are hereby dropped. She turned to Marcus, her voice softening. "Mr. Johnson, on behalf of this court, I offer my deepest apologies for the injustice you've endured." Marcus nodded, tears welling in his eyes, as the weight of the past few days finally lifted from his shoulders. He looked around the courtroom, catching the eyes of his family and friends who had stood by him through this ordeal. But Judge Reeves wasn't finished. Her voice rang out, filled with righteous anger. "This case has exposed a rot within our justice system that can no longer be ignored. I am ordering a full investigation into the police department to root out any and all corruption that may be lurking in its ranks." The announcement sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Officers shifted uncomfortably, wondering how far this investigation would reach. Activists in the gallery nodded in approval, seeing this as a long overdue step towards accountability. As the courtroom slowly emptied, Marcus remained seated, trying to process the whirlwind of events. His nightmare had ended, but he knew the fight for justice was far from over. He vowed to use his experience to advocate for others who might be facing similar injustices, determined to ensure that what happened to him would never happen to anyone else. The arrest of Officer Miller sent shockwaves through the local community, exposing deep-rooted issues within the city's police department. As Judge Reeves ordered a full investigation, the case sparked intense debate about accountability in law enforcement. Legal experts emphasized the critical role of judicial oversight in preventing police misconduct. One prominent civil rights attorney stated, "This case demonstrates the power of our judicial system to address systemic issues when judges act as a check on law enforcement. It's a crucial step towards ensuring justice is served and individual rights are protected." The immediate aftermath saw calls for action from community leaders and activists. Local organizers quickly mobilized, planning town hall meetings and forming citizen committees to push for transparency. Within days, the mayor announced the formation of an independent review board to examine police practices and policies. As patriots, we must stay informed and engaged on these crucial issues unfolding in our communities. The path forward requires sustained effort, but cases like Marcus Johnson's remind us why speaking out against injustice matters. By remaining vigilant and demanding accountability, we can work towards meaningful change in our justice system. Join our community of people who believe in justice, empathy, and powerful storytelling. By subscribing, you're not just watching. You're part of a movement that values real stories and change. Add us to your daily routine and make every story count. Subscribe and join us each day for stories that make an impact.